On a quiet afternoon in the suburbs, a young black boy eagerly rides his bike home until the door of a parked car suddenly swings open, knocking him to the ground. He's injured, but instead of apologizing, the white woman who steps out starts yelling, blaming him, and demanding compensation. Minutes later, the police arrive and instantly believe her without asking any questions. Just as the handcuffs come out, the boy's powerful mother arrives. Her presence will turn the situation in a way none of them ever expected. The late afternoon sun bathed the quiet neighborhood of Cedar Springs in a golden warmth. It was one of those spring days where everything seemed too perfect, almost staged. The trimmed hedges, the rows of pastel-colored mailboxes, the fluttering American flags, and the gentle rustle of leaves swaying in rhythm with a lazy breeze. The streets shimmered slightly, heat rising from the asphalt, and the distant clink of a wind chime sang like a lullaby over the porch of house number 146. Peaceful, almost sterile. Taryn Barnes, age 13, was coasting down Woodpine Lane on his silver bicycle. He wore his school uniform, khaki pants slightly too long, navy polo with a stitched emblem from Cedar Springs Middle, and a red backpack slung over one shoulder. His earbuds pumped out an old Tupac beat, his favorite lately, not because he really understood the lyrics, but because it made him feel stronger somehow, more anchored. His face was calm, even a little dreamy, as he pedaled slowly through the neighborhood he'd known all his life. His eyes scanned the sky more than the road, tracing the path of a distant airplane with a longing he couldn't explain. Maybe one day he'd leave this town and study stars, be a scientist, travel the world. Or maybe just live somewhere he didn't have to feel so watched. Because even here, in this polished little pocket of middle-class America, being black meant carrying something invisible on your shoulders, a weight that other kids didn't even know existed. But today wasn't about weight or worry. He had survived a science quiz, finally figured out how to solve that stupid math problem, and best of all, tonight, his mom was home early. She had promised meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and their favorite game show. And for the first time in weeks, they might actually eat together at the kitchen table instead of with her laptop open beside her. That thought made his chest swell with excitement, and he sped up a little, humming the beat of the next song. Cedar Springs was always quiet this hour, moms walking dogs, retirees trimming hedges, the occasional Amazon van humming by. The street was empty ahead, as it usually was, just a few parked cars along the curb. Nothing unusual. Nothing threatening. That's when he saw it. A silver SUV parked tightly against the curb, not flashing hazard lights, not even showing signs of life. It was just there, silent. He noticed it only in the periphery of his vision. Thinking maybe someone had just pulled up, he didn't even slow down. There was no reason to. Then, without warning, the driver's side door burst open. There was no time to think, no time to brake. No time to swerve, just a jolt of metal and pain. The impact knocked Taryn sideways, his handlebars twisted, and his body flung off the bike, hitting the pavement with a painful thud. His elbows scraped the asphalt, and a hot sting shot up his leg as his knees skidded raw. His earbuds flew out. The music died mid-beat. The world turned quiet except for the pounding of his heart and the faint ringing in his ears. He stayed still for a second, shocked, breath knocked out of him. The bike lay on its side. The front was slowly spinning. He sat up slowly, wincing, his palms scraped and bleeding, and looked up right into the eyes of the woman who had just stepped out of the SUV. Blonde hair, a tightly tailored cream blazer, red lipstick like a warning sign, and mirrored sunglasses she didn't bother removing. She looked down at him, not with concern, not with fear, but with instant fury, as if he had attacked her. Taryn blinked, dazed, not yet realizing that this moment, this street, this woman, this ordinary spring afternoon, was about to spiral into something far bigger than a fall off a bike. Taryn barely had time to breathe before the woman's voice cracked through the air like a whip. "Are you kidding me right now?" she shrieked, stepping around the open door with exaggerated fury. Her heels clicked against the pavement, sharp and precise, like every step was a condemnation. "Look what you've done. You scratched my car, my brand new Lexus." Still sitting on the ground, Taryn looked from her flushed face to the faint, barely there scuffed near the edge of the door. His palms burned, his knee throbbed, and confusion clouded his voice. I didn't mean to. You opened the door out of nowhere. I didn't see. Oh, please. She cut him off with a wave of her manicured hand. Sunglasses now pulled off and dangling between her fingers like a weapon. Don't play innocent with me. You were going way too fast and not watching where you were going. Typical. Always causing trouble. Taryn blinked, tried to make sense of her reaction. The pain in his knee was spreading, but it wasn't that which made his stomach knot. It was the tone in her voice. Accusatory. Patronizing. As if he were a criminal instead of a kid who had just gotten knocked off his bike. He stood up slowly, wincing, brushing grit from his pants. Ma'am, I'm sorry if your car got scratched, but... She took a step closer, pointing a red-painted finger straight at his chest. Don't man me. You think I don't know this game? You throw yourself into cars, claim you're hurt, and then expect a payout. I've read the reports. I've seen the news. Taryn's mouth opened, but no sound came out. He had never experienced anything like this. He wasn't trying to get anything. He just wanted to get home, to eat dinner, to tell his mom about finally getting that math question right. Now his throat tightened with something between fear and humiliation. You little liar, she hissed. You think because you're a kid in black that people won't question you? That I won't question you? You picked the wrong woman, sweetheart. Her voice was rising now, slicing into the calm of the neighborhood. Loud and sharp. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked once. She turned, snatched her phone from her bag with shaking hands, and began dialing. I'm calling the police. You're not walking away from this. You damaged my property. You made me feel threatened. And I'm not taking any chances. No, please, Taryn stammered, panic flickering in his eyes. I just want to call my mom. She'll explain. She's... Let me guess, Miranda sneered. Your mom's a lawyer? A senator? Don't care. You don't get to touch my car and walk away, because mommy's important. You brought this on yourself. The screen of her phone lit up with a number, 911. She spoke quickly, forcefully. Yes, I need an officer right away. There's a teenage boy, African-American, probably early teens. He just rammed into my car on his bike. He's yelling, aggressive. I'm alone. I don't feel safe. Taryn took a step back, frozen. The words, aggressive, I'm alone, don't feel safe, slammed into him harder than the car door. They weren't just lies. They were dangerous lies. The kind of lies that got kids like him put in handcuffs. Or worse. I wasn't yelling, he whispered to no one. I wasn't even yelling. But she had already ended the call. Her face was a mixture of righteous rage and cold calculation. You're going to pay for this, she said, folding her arms. If not with cash, then with consequences. Taryn stood there, knees still shaking, pulse pounding in his ears. The scuff on the Lexus stared back at him like a target. His scraped hands clenched into fists, not in anger, but in sheer helplessness. All he wanted was to go home. But now, home felt like 1,000 miles away. The sound of sirens echoed faintly in the distance, growing louder with every second. Taryn stood on the sidewalk like a statue carved in panic, his hands trembling slightly by his sides, his scraped palms sticky with drying blood. His bike lay a few feet away, lifeless and bent, a small puddle of shame in a peaceful neighborhood that no longer felt safe or familiar. Miranda stood stiffly by her car, arms crossed tightly across her chest, jaw clenched, eyes flaring with a kind of cold superiority that made Taryn's stomach twist. There wasn't a flicker of concern in her expression, only victory. The squad car pulled up fast, brakes hissing as it came to a stop. The door swung open, and out stepped Officer Danholt. He was tall, stocky, early 40s maybe, with a jaw that looked like it had been clenched for decades. His mirrored sunglasses reflected the scene like a distorted truth. Taryn, small and injured. Miranda, affluent and seething. Before Holt even said a word, Miranda was already pointing. There he is. That's him, she said breathlessly, as if she had just survived a near-death encounter. He came flying down the street and slammed into my car. I opened the door, and he was just there. Then he started yelling. aggressive. I was scared. Still am. Taryn opened his mouth to protest, but Holt didn't even glance at him. He was already moving toward the boy with brisk, heavy steps. "What's your name, son?" he demanded, voice clipped. Taryn swallowed. Taryn Barnes? I didn't mean... Put your hands where I can see them. Holt snapped, his hand already brushing the metal of his cuffs. Taryn's heart dropped into his shoes. "Please," he stammered. "Can I just call my mom first? She needs to be here. She'll explain." "You can explain at the station," Holt said. "You're being detained for damaging private property and for exhibiting threatening behavior. You're lucky I'm not adding assault." "I didn't do anything," Taryn pleaded, eyes wide. "She opened her door into me. She didn't even look. I wasn't going fast," I said. "Hands up!" Holt barked. Taryn raised his hands, voice cracking. "I'm not resisting. I swear I just need to call my mom. Please." The cuffs clicked shut around his wrists with metallic finality that made his eyes burn. They were too tight. He could feel the cold steel bite into his skin. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not in broad daylight. Not when he was the one who got hurt. Not when he'd done everything right. Miranda watched with smug satisfaction, barely hiding the smirk tugging at the corner of her mouth. "Maybe next time he'll think twice before playing Crash for cash," she muttered under her breath, loud enough for Taryn to hear. "They always act innocent until someone holds them accountable." Those words didn't just sting. They hollowed him out. Not he. Like he wasn't even an individual. Just another problem in her world. Another stereotype to be filed and punished. Taryn turned his head away, eyes searching the sky as if it could save him. But it didn't feel big anymore. It felt small, boxed in, like the back seat of a patrol car. "I need my mom," he whispered again. But this time, no one answered. Holt was leading him toward the cruiser. Miranda was checking her car's non-existent damage with exaggerated concern. And somewhere in Taryn's chest, where hope used to sit, a cold knot began to form, tight, heavy, and growing with every step he took away from justice. Before Officer Holt could even guide Taryn into the backseat of the cruiser, the distant hum of an engine grew louder, faster, cutting through the silence like a warning shot. A sleek black SUV rounded the corner, tires kissing the curb with perfect control, then braked hard. The driver's door flew open. Out stepped Mayor Ariel Barnes. She didn't run. She didn't shout. She walked deliberate, commanding, heels echoing with every stride, as if the very pavement yielded to her presence. Her tailored navy blue blazer hugged her shoulders like armor. Her natural hair was pulled back into a tight bun, her face unreadable. But her eyes, her eyes, burned with fury too focused to be loud. It was the kind of rage that comes only from terror, the kind only a mother knows. Taryn turned as best he could, wrists still cuffed, breath caught in his throat. "Mom." Ariel's gaze locked on the cuffs first, then her son's scraped skin, then Holt, the quiet power in her voice. Cracked the air like a gavel. "Why is my son in handcuffs?" Holt blinked, caught mid-motion, his posture shifting like a man realizing too late that he'd misread the entire play. "Mayor Barnes, I wasn't aware." "I didn't ask if you knew who I was," Ariel interrupted, eyes narrowing. "I asked why a bleeding, unarmed child, my child, is being restrained in public while the person responsible for this incident stands over there inspecting her car like it's sacred." She called it in. Holt said, too fast, too defensive, claimed he was the aggressor, that he hit her vehicle and was confrontational. "And you believed her?" Ariel asked. Her voice didn't rise, but her presence filled the space like thunderclouds gathering. "Without questioning him, without assessing the scene, without noting the bruises on his skin, do you detain every middle schooler before listening to their side, or is this a specialized policy?" Holt opened his mouth, but said nothing. The sirens were gone, but the silence that followed was heavier. Miranda, still near her car, stepped forward, folding her arms. "Look, I don't care who you are. I felt threatened. That's all that matters. He flew into my car like a missile, then tried to guilt-trip me. These kids know how to play the system." "These kids? Do you mean children?" Ariel asked. Or do you mean black boys who exist in your space without asking permission? Miranda scoffed, waving a dismissive hand. Don't twist my words. I don't see color. No, Ariel said coldly. You see threat. That's what you saw when you looked at my son. Taryn stood frozen, his eyes darting between the adults. Every part of him wanted to collapse into her, to hide, to disappear into the fabric of his mother's voice. But some part of him, small, pulsing alive, felt proud that she didn't scream, proud that she didn't beg. She fought with poise, with facts, with presence. I want those cuffs off. Now, Ariel said to Holt. Holt hesitated, but in the end, he moved, slowly, methodically. He unlocked the cuffs as if each click of the metal was an admission of guilt. Taryn exhaled shakily, rubbing his wrists. His mother stepped between him and the cruiser. Ariel didn't stop. I also want traffic camera footage pulled from the intersection. Immediately, if this child is being accused of anything, we will have full transparency. And for the record, Officer Holt, I will be filing a formal complaint regarding your protocol today. Miranda rolled her eyes. You're overreacting. You people always make everything about race. Ariel turned back to her, a faint smile playing on her lips, but didn't reach her eyes. And people like you always pretend it isn't. Taryn stood beside his mother, no longer trembling, but not yet whole. He looked at the woman who had screamed at him, at the officer who had shackled him, and then at the bike still lying in the street. Nothing had changed, and yet everything had. The tension simmered like a storm ready to snap. Ariel's demand for camera footage hung in the air, heavier than the silence that followed it. Officer Holt shifted uncomfortably, the authority that once wrapped around him like a shield, now feeling fragile, exposed. Miranda turned her back with a scoff, arms crossed, muttering something about how everything was always made bigger than it needed to be. But then, the man who had been sitting silently on a nearby bench, who had pulled low, phone in hand, rose and stepped forward. He was unassuming, mid-20s maybe, skin a warm bronze, clothes plain, but the light in his eyes carried weight. Without a word, he held up his phone toward Ariel and Taryn. I got it all, he said, voice calm, even from the second she opened that door into him. The yelling, the lies, the way he didn't even raise his voice. Ariel turned to him, steady. You recorded it? He nodded, thought someone might need the truth. These streets lie sometimes, but cameras don't. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Holt cleared his throat. May I see that footage? He hesitated, then handed it over. Holt took it, watched in silence as the incident played out. There was no aggressive shouting, no reckless riding, just a boy, blindsided by a door, hurt, accused, and nearly arrested. The final seconds showed Miranda on the phone, describing Taryn as threatening, dangerous, hostile, all lies, clear as daylight. Ariel watched Holt's expression shift, discomfort blooming into shame. He didn't look up when he handed the phone back. I was wrong, he said quietly. I shouldn't have detained him. I acted on assumption. No, Ariel replied sharply, her voice no longer cold but edged with grief. You acted on bias. Holt nodded once, as if each word stabbed into a part of him he wasn't ready to confront. The footage changes everything. I'll file the report accurately, and I'll initiate a review of my conduct. You'll also make a copy and attach it to the complaint I'll be submitting to Internal Affairs, Ariel added. This won't disappear. Not because I'm the mayor, but because my son is a child who deserves dignity. Every child does. Miranda scoffed again, her voice dripping in false indignation. You can't seriously be turning this into a crusade. He hit my car. There was damage. There was no damage, Holt interrupted, his voice now firm. I inspected your vehicle. Not a single scratch. Your story falls apart under evidence. Miranda's mouth opened, then closed. For once, she had no performance left. Taryn looked from face to face, his heart beating slower now, his shoulders still tense but no longer trembling. Someone had believed him. Someone had seen what really happened. The knot inside his chest began to loosen, just slightly. Ariel wrapped an arm around his shoulders. She didn't say anything, but her grip was strong, like an anchor, pulling him back from a storm he hadn't been ready for. And just like that, the tide began to turn. The aftermath unfolded not with sirens, but with silence, the thick, contemplative kind that settles when people finally realize the weight of what's just happened. Holt stood still, the badge on his chest suddenly heavier. Not just a symbol of authority, but a reminder of how easily it can be misused. Miranda backed away from the group like a shadow losing its light, her arms now wrapped tightly around herself. Not in defense, but in retreat. She said nothing more. There was nothing left to twist. The man who had recorded everything returned to his bench without fanfare, slipping his phone back into his pocket, like it was just another day, like he hadn't just rescued a boy from the edge of being buried beneath a lie. But the internet was already doing its work. By nightfall, the video would be everywhere. TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, stitched together with hashtags like hashtag Justice for Taryn and hashtag Not a Gun, shared by strangers who saw in their sons, their brothers, their students. By morning, it would be on every local outlet, then the national ones, spinning outward like wildfire, lit by truth. Within 24 hours, Officer Holt would be placed on administrative leave pending investigation. The footage, coupled with his admission of misconduct, left the department no room to maneuver. Policy demanded accountability. And now, finally, so did the public. He didn't protest. He didn't argue. He filed a report with every detail Taryn deserved. And in that act, though it didn't erase the moment he chose bias over reason, he began to reckon with it. Miranda Keene would face charges for filing a false police report and interfering with an active investigation. Her store's Yelp page became a battleground of outrage. Reviews flooded in, not about merchandise but morality. Boycott Keene's boutique, they wrote. Protect our kids. Her name would be remembered not for her clothing line or polished smile, but for the way she tried to weaponize fear, and lost. But none of that mattered to Taryn that evening. Not really. What mattered was sitting in the passenger seat of his mom's SUV, the leather worn beneath him, his scraped hands bandaged now, the cuff marks still faint on his wrists. He didn't speak at first. Neither did she. The car moved through the streets of Cedar Springs in silence, the sun low, casting gold over the windshield like it was trying to make the day look beautiful again. Ariel finally glanced over. "How's the knee?" "It hurts," he said, barely above a whisper. "But I'm okay." She nodded once. "You were brave. You stayed calm. That wasn't easy." "I wasn't calm," he admitted. "I was scared. Really scared." "Being scared doesn't make you weak," she said. "It means you knew what could have happened, that you understood the danger, but you didn't let it define you. That's strength." He turned toward the window, watched the trees pass like memories he couldn't name yet. "I kept thinking, what if you hadn't picked up? What if you hadn't come?" Her voice softened. "But I did, and I always will." They pulled into the driveway, the house standing quiet like it had been waiting for them. Inside, the kitchen smelled of rosemary and garlic. She'd started dinner before the call. The meatloaf sat in the oven, the potatoes cold in their pot, forgotten in the rush of sirens and steel. Ariel reheated them without comment. Taryn sat at the table, the same spot he always did, but tonight everything felt a little different. The table, the air, even the walls. They all knew something now. As they ate, he watched his mom more than his food. She moved with the same grace she always did. But something had shifted. She was still the mayor, still the woman who could shut down a press conference with a single glance. But tonight, she was also just his mom, and that meant more. After dinner, Taryn stepped outside, his body sore but restless. He stood beneath the porch light, hands in his pockets, staring up at the sky. The stars were beginning to push through the dusk, small, hesitant, but there, always there. Ariel joined him a moment later, wrapping a sweater around her shoulders. "Want to sit?" He nodded. They sank into the porch steps together. He leaned into her side without saying anything. After a while, he asked, "Do you think people forget?" "Some will," she said, "but the right ones won't. And more importantly, you won't. This will shape you, but it won't break you." He looked up again at the night sky stretching wide above them. "It just sucks that it happened at all." "I know," she whispered. "It's not fair, and I can't fix that overnight. But you stood in truth, and the truth stood with you. That matters more than you know." Taryn sat in silence, thinking about all the things he didn't say, to Hope, to Miranda, even to himself, about how helpless he had felt, how powerless. But tonight, in this moment, under these stars, something inside him felt steadier. Not healed, not yet, but real. And as the sky above them glittered quietly, he whispered, "Maybe justice is like the stars. You don't always see it, but it's always there, waiting to shine through." Ariel smiled softly. "Exactly." And a night heavy with truth and survival held them both in its quiet, unyielding light.